Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcore.com, and this is the first in a series of videos about working with MongooseJS, which allows you to work with Mongo databases in your JavaScript applications. Cool. Now, bottom line is this. What you want to do is go to mongodb.com. So you're going to want to head over to mongodb.com and open up an account. Okay, you can get a free database or a free cluster. Just basically set the default options, create your first cluster. One cluster is going to be plenty for pretty much any practice project you have. Generally, you would only really get into like those paid tiers for Mongo when you actually start building production apps that you want to go out and like make money on and have lots of users. But for all your practice, portfolio projects, stuff like that, you know, the free cluster will do the job. It's been a while since I've logged into this account, so I'm going to click resume to turn my cluster back on. Okay, so it's going to take a few minutes to turn back on. But a couple things you're going to want to do when you do this is, one, you want to make sure that you have your network access set up to allowing all IP addresses. Okay, so I'm going to edit this just to reactivate that. Confirm. Although it's probably going to say that until the cluster is back up and running. Then you're going to want to create users. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new temporary user because that way it won't exist by the time you guys are watching this video. Okay, so we'll just say temp. Okay, it's going to be a temporary user and it will last 6 hours. It's fine. Okay, so now I have this user. Cancel. There we go. I have this user. Let's go check to see, hey, is this thing turned back on? It's working on it. But bottom line is it'll eventually turn back on. We can start kind of getting the next steps ready. So while that turns back on, let's move over to Visual Studio Code. Open up Visual Studio Code to an empty folder. This is assuming you have Node installed. Okay, so I'm assuming you have Node installed. If not, install Node. And I'm going to open up a new terminal. And what I'm going to do is create a new node project. So we're going to say npm init-y, which will create us a new node project, which means a package.json. There it is. Okay, and then we want to install the libraries we want to use. So I'm going to install Mongoose, and I'm going to install .env, because generally you're going to want to store all your sensitive database credentials not in your code. Okay, basically what will happen is you'll put a .env file, which I'm going to do right now. So install those libraries. What you'll do is you'll create what's called a .env file. So I will create a new file called .env. And this is generally going to be where you want to store those sensitive details. So you just create a variable. I'll just call it like Mongo Uri. Okay, that's just going to be the connection string. The string, basically the way .env files work is that you put the name of the variable and then equals whatever you want that variable to equal, and you just do it one variable per line. The thing is that generally what you do is you also add a Git Ignore file. So this way, like, Git ignores the file. So I'm going to say, hey, Git ignore.env, and generally you also want to ignore the node modules folder because you don't want to have to push all that code up to GitHub. Okay. And the benefit of this is that now this file will not be on GitHub, so any sensitive details I put in there will not be exposed to the rest of the world. Okay, because that way people don't end up using your Mongo account and running up a bill on your account and things like that. You would then just have to recreate that .env file anywhere you deploy your app. Not a big deal. Okay, cool. So that's all fine and good. Okay, so we see that's all installed there. And then we're going to create 2 more files. And we'll call this one like intro.js. So we'll call this like lesson1.js, because each lesson will kind of do things a little bit differently. Okay. So what I'm going to do is that, see, now this is all set up and it's running. Okay. I'm not going to get into really so much about like MongoDB and document databases and how document databases work for this particular video. I do have other videos where I go deeper into like different types of databases and the specifics of Mongo. But bottom line is that it stores data. It generally stores the data in a format that's very similar to JavaScript objects. So it makes it really intuitive to work when you're working with JavaScript. But to begin connecting, I click on connect. and I want to connect my application. So basically all I really care about is getting this little URL here. This is the URL to connect to Mongo. So I'm going to copy that over, put that here in the variable. And again, the name of the variable doesn't matter. Like I can call this whatever I want. I just have to make sure I call it by the same name in my code. Now I just got to make sure I fill in these spots. So like here should be the username. So we said we created that temporary user, temp. If you ever have problems with like your username and password, oftentimes I find like if you have a really complicated username and password, like a lot of numbers and letters and special characters, you can run into issues when you're trying to log in. So I always try to keep it simple. I run into less issues that way when using my URI. Or oftentimes just deleting the user and recreating a new user can fix the problem as well. Let's see, I put the username and password here. So essentially the way this reads is that I'm saying this is the protocol. So it's a Mongo protocol. I'm connecting to a Mongo database. This is the user and password, the username and password. Then @ symbol separates it and it says like this is where the server is. So this is literally the actual server where that database is located. And then when I access that database, what's after this slash is the particular database I'm accessing. Okay, so right here, what I want to do is like write a database name. So generally I'll call it, my Mongo DB. That'll be the name of the database. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's just that anytime you do any work with this connection, it's going to add it to that database. Okay, and then this is just a query string that just sets certain settings on the database that we don't need to touch. Just leave that as is. Okay, and then that's good. Cool. So now that's all set. So now what's going to happen is we want to make sure that we're using .env. Like we want to make sure that those end variables are available. So to do that, okay, and actually I'll just put some comments in here. Load .env variables. So we do require .env, and then we're just going to chain right off of that and use the config function, which loads the .env variables right off the bat. Then we want to bring in Mongoose, so import Mongoose. Okay, and then we're going to say const Mongoose equals require Mongoose. Okay, so now we have Mongoose in this variable here that we can now use. The first thing you generally want to do is you want to establish your connection. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is we are going to again establish connection. So first thing we want to do is grab the URI. So again, we want to grab the Mongo URI. The variable name again doesn't matter here. What does matter is that I do process.env.mongo URI, because this has to match whatever I call it in my .env file. Like that's where that variable name is coming from. Because essentially what's happening is that when this line of code runs, it takes all the variables in that .env file and adds them to this process.env object. That's just something that exists in Node. Okay, I have other videos where I go specifically into what the process object is and the .env object. Just know that when this line runs, anything you have in this file will get added to this object. So now see I can access it. But instead of having to type in process.env.mongo URI over and over again, I'm assigning it to this variable. Okay, so there we go. And then we're going to connect. And let me just say establish connection. Okay, and the way you do that is you just do mongoose.connect. Okay, and mongoose.connect, and we pass in the Mongo URI. And that establishes the connection. Wonderful. Okay, now generally the next thing you want to do is you want to have some like messages that tell you like, hey, are you connected? Are you not connected? Okay, so generally we're going to set up our, messages, because otherwise you're not going to know when you get connected. So what we do is the mongoose.connection. So this mongoose.connection thing, that's the connection. Like that's an object that represents your actual connection to Mongoose. So when this function is done, when this function actually completes, there's an actual connection object stored here that is the actual connection to Mongoose. And what it does, it has certain events that it triggers. So like when the connection opens, an event is triggered. When the connection closes, an event is triggered. If there's an error in connecting, an event is triggered. And we can listen for those events using the on method. Okay, so what I want to do is chain these like this. And then basically these ons, always say these on methods, it takes two arguments. The first is the event name. So the first event is going to be the open event. So we want to listen to when the connection opens. And then the second argument is a function that runs when the connection opens. Okay, so we're going to say dot on. We just want to send the message console.log. You are connected to Mongo. So then when we see that message, we know we're connected because this is only going to run if the open event occurs, which means a connection was open. And what we can do is we can chain these off of each other. So I don't have to do mongoose.connection.on again. I can just keep chaining the .ons on each other because it's returning itself. Like I'm not going to get into like how you design chainable functions right now. So I would also want to listen to the close event. So I can make this to you are disconnected from Mongo. And then the error event. The error event is special because it actually receives the error object as an argument. So then we can then console log that error. And there we go. And then right now what we'll do is we'll just do also, we'll close the connection. Okay, and we're going to do mongoose.connection.close. And then that'll close the connection. So we're just going to run this. And then again, what we should end up seeing is that it connects and then it closes. But that's a good thing because then we know that we've actually successfully connected. If we see something else, then we have to troubleshoot from there. So I'll say node less than 1.js. And yeah, that worked. Okay, so you see you are connected to Mongo. You are disconnected. Well, disconnected from Mongo. There we go. Okay, so we've done it. We've connected to the database and we disconnected. Now in the next video, we'll talk about like how to actually put information into the database. So I'll see you guys there. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at AlexMercedCoder. Have a great day and subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, and have a great day.